Have you ever felt like life keeps testing your peace? One moment everything flows smoothly, and the next, a single word, a setback, or someone's judgment pulls you into chaos. You try to stay calm, to rise above it, but the noise of the world always finds a way back in. We live in a time where emotions move faster than awareness, where comparison and control quietly drain our strength. But what if nothing outside of you truly had the power to disturb your peace? What if you could walk through life's storms with the same calm as still water, untouchable, grounded, and free? In this video, you'll discover 7 timeless Buddhist lessons that show you how to build that kind of unshakable peace. These teachings are not abstract philosophy, they are living practices, simple yet profound, that help you reclaim control over your mind and heart. Together, we'll explore how to let go of attachment, rise above judgment, and return to the quiet power that has always been within you. By the end of this journey, you'll realize it's not the world that must change for you to be at peace. It's the way you see the world. 1. Understand the nature of impermanence. There is a quiet truth that lives beneath every experience, whether joyful or painful, whether expected or sudden. That truth is impermanence. Everything in life changes. The seasons shift, our bodies age, friendships evolve, and the emotions that once felt so overwhelming gradually soften into memory. Nothing stays the same, not success, not failure, not the praise we once held close, or the criticism that once pierced our hearts. Yet, even though change is natural, we often resist it. We cling to what once brought us comfort and fight against what we cannot control. This resistance becomes the root of so much inner struggle. The Buddha taught that all conditioned things are impermanent, and to understand this not just with our minds but with our hearts is to begin to free ourselves from suffering. When we grasp for permanence in a world that constantly moves, we suffer not because of the movement itself, but because we wanted things to stay still, like trying to hold on to water in our hands. The more tightly we grip, the faster it slips away. But when we relax the grip, when we soften into what is, we begin to feel a quiet relief. We were never meant to stop the river. We were meant to flow with it. There's a story of a monk who once carried a fragile bowl across a mountain trail. He was careful at first, focused on not letting it fall. But a sudden gust of wind startled him, and the bowl slipped and shattered on the rocks. His companion expected him to grieve the loss, but instead, the monk bowed gently and whispered, "I saw it broken from the beginning." This wasn't cold detachment, it was profound wisdom. He understood that everything we love is already changing, already fading, already returning to where it came from. And when we live with this awareness, we stop being shocked by loss. We begin to love more gently, to appreciate more deeply, knowing that every moment is already a goodbye in slow motion. When we truly accept impermanence, life softens. We stop clinging to what must pass and begin to treasure what is here, now. We become less reactive, less entitled, and more grateful. Instead of asking, "Why did this change?" we begin to ask, "How can I meet this moment with grace?" Because even joy changes form, even pain evolves, and even the darkest night will eventually give way to dawn. This is not to say we shouldn't love or build or dream. Rather, it is a reminder to hold all of it lightly, to know that our work, our relationships, our identities, they are like sand mandalas, intricate, meaningful, and ultimately destined to be swept away. And in that sweeping, there is beauty too. not because it lasts, but because it was real, and it was in us. So when life changes, and it will pause and breathe, notice the urge to resist, the voice that says, "This shouldn't be happening." And gently, compassionately, remind yourself, it is happening. Let your heart widen. Let yourself seal it all. The sorrow, the joy, the wonder. Let it pass through you like wind through an open window. You don't need to hold it all. You only need to witness it. Impermanence is not the enemy. It is the teacher. It invites us to stop waiting for things to settle, and instead settle ourselves within the movement. It shows us that peace isn't found in stillness outside, but in the stillness we cultivate inside. And perhaps, in the quiet rhythm of change, we will finally realize the most stable thing in life is the fact that everything moves. 2. Release attachments and negative emotions. One of the deepest sources of our pain comes not from what happens to us, but from how tightly we hold on to it. We cling to moments we wish could have lasted longer, to people who have already gone their own way, to words that hurt us years ago but still echo in our minds. We cling to the image of who we think we should be, to the idea of how life should unfold, to outcomes that refuse to go as planned. And when reality doesn't match the stories we tell ourselves, the heart tightens. We suffer not because life has betrayed us, but because we cannot release our grip on what was never meant to stay. The Buddha often compared attachment to a burning coal we hold in our hands, believing it will keep us warm. In truth, it only burns. We think that holding on will give us safety or control, yet the opposite happens. The more we cling, the more fragile we feel. The moment we tie our peace to things outside of us, success, affection, recognition, even stability, we surrender our freedom to the unpredictable nature of the world. People change, seasons shift, feelings rise and fade like tides. When we attach our happiness to impermanent things, we make ourselves hostages to their coming and going. There was once a student who came to a wise monk, his face full of anger. "They betrayed me," he said. "I cannot forgive. How can I let this go?" The monk handed him a cup and asked him to hold it tightly. "Do you feel the strain in your hand?" the monk asked. "Yes," the student said. "Now hold it tighter." After a few minutes, the student's hand began to ache. "The pain you feel," said the monk, "is not from the cup, it is from the holding." The student opened his hand, and the pain began to fade. The monk smiled gently and said, "Forgiveness is not a gift to others. It is the release of your own burden. Letting go does not mean indifference or avoidance. It does not mean suppressing what we feel. True release begins when we allow our emotions to arise without judgment. Anger, sadness, fear, they are not enemies to fight but guests to greet. Observe them with awareness, like watching clouds drift across the open sky. They come, they stay for a while, and they go. When we no longer identify with them, when we stop saying, "I am angry," and instead notice, "Anger is here," something inside loosens. We create distance between what we feel and who we are, and in that space, calm naturally appears. This is the quiet art of non-attachment. To care deeply, but not cling. To love sincerely, but not possess. To experience fully, but not demand permanence. It is not about closing your heart. It is about softening your grasp. The more we hold lightly, the more freely life can move through us. When you lose something or someone, it's easy to feel that part of you has been taken away. But perhaps nothing was lost, only returned to the flow from which it came. Like leaves carried downstream, everything eventually finds its own way back to the ocean. In moments of pain, try to breathe and notice what you're holding. Is it anger that keeps repeating the same story? Is it fear disguised as control? Or grief pretending to protect love? Whatever it is, see it clearly, name it gently, and then let it pass through you like wind through open hands. The act of release is not a single gesture. It is a practice, one you return to again and again, each time with a little more ease, a little less fear. When we stop clinging to what no longer serves us, we make room for peace to arise. Calm does not need to be created. It only needs to be uncovered. Beneath the noise of resistance, it has always been there, steady, patient, waiting. Letting go is not a loss but a return to yourself, unburdened and whole, where the heart finally remembers what it feels like to breathe freely again. 3. Train in mindfulness and meditation. Peace does not arrive by accident. It is not something we stumble upon when life becomes easy or when all our problems fade away. It is something we cultivate patiently, consistently, like tending a quiet garden within the mind. The Buddha taught that a calm mind is the greatest strength one can possess, yet it does not appear on its own. It grows through the simple discipline of returning to the present moment, again and again, no matter how many times we drift away. Mindfulness and meditation are the twin paths that lead us there, guiding us back each time we lose ourselves in thought, worry, or desire. Mindfulness begins with awareness, the art of noticing without judging. In every breath, in every step, in every task we perform, we are given a chance to wake up from the trance of distraction. When we are mindful, even small moments become sacred. Drinking tea becomes a ceremony. Walking becomes prayer. Breathing becomes a quiet reminder that we are alive. The purpose is not to escape the world, but to be fully present in it, to meet each sound, each feeling, each sensation with curiosity instead of resistance. In this simple awareness, a gap opens between what happens and how we react, and in that gap lies our freedom. Meditation deepens this awareness. It is not about silencing the mind or chasing perfect stillness. It is about befriending the mind as it is. When you sit in meditation, thoughts will come like waves against the shore. Memories, plans, fears, random fragments of stories. Many people think they are failing when their minds wander, but wandering is natural. The practice is not to stop the waves, but to stop being pulled by them. Each time you notice that your mind has drifted, and you gently guide it back to the breath, you are training the muscle of presence. You are learning the art of returning softly, without blame, without force. There's a story of a young monk who once asked his teacher, "Master, why do we meditate every day if peace never seems to last?" The teacher smiled and said, "When you wash your face each morning, do you expect to stay clean forever?" The monk laughed, understanding. Meditation is the daily cleansing of the mind, removing the dust of confusion and the stains of worry. Each session is a small act of remembering who we are beneath the noise, a still, aware presence, untouched by the storms of thought. As you practice, you may begin to notice subtle changes. The mind that once reacted quickly starts to pause before speaking. The emotions that once flooded your chest begin to soften sooner. You start to recognize anger as energy that rises and fades, fear as a wave that peaks and dissolves, sadness as a cloud passing through a vast sky. Slowly, the distance between stimulus and response widens, and in that space, peace begins to root itself more deeply. Meditation doesn't make life perfect. It makes you more capable of meeting imperfection with calm. In moments of chaos, mindfulness becomes your anchor. You may not always control what happens, but you can always return to your breath. Feel the inhale, the exhale. Each breath is a reminder, I am here. In that awareness, the noise of the world loses its power. It doesn't mean that pain or stress disappears, but they no longer rule over you. You learn to observe them like a river flowing past, knowing that you are not the current. You are the observer standing on the bank, steady and awake. With time, mindfulness and meditation weave their calmness into daily lives. You begin to carry the stillness of your practice into conversation, work, and rest. You respond more gently, listen more deeply, and live with more presence. Eventually, you realize that peace was never far away. It was only hidden beneath layers of distraction and noise. And every moment you return to awareness, every breath you take with full presence, is a quiet homecoming to yourself. That is the true gift of meditation, not escape, but awakening. A calm mind, trained in mindfulness, becomes a refuge that nothing and no one can shake. 4. Cultivate compassion and non-judgment. There will always be moments when people say or do things that hurt us, disappoint us, or seem impossible to understand. Sometimes, it's a harsh word, said in anger, a betrayal we didn't expect, or simply the cold distance of someone withdrawing without explanation. Our first instinct may be to judge, to harden our hearts, to build walls of resentment in the name of self-protection. But in the quiet light of wisdom, Buddhism teaches something different. That every being, no matter how unskillful their actions, is doing the best they can from their current level of awareness. When we begin to see life through this lens, anger softens and compassion becomes possible. To cultivate compassion is not to excuse harm or pretend that wrongs don't hurt. It is to recognize that pain often flows through people like an inherited current, passed from one wounded heart to another. The one who lashes out may themselves be carrying an old wound, one they never learned how to heal. When we meet hostility with hostility, that current only grows stronger. But when we meet it with empathy, the pattern begins to break. Compassion, then, is not weakness. It is quiet courage, the ability to remain kind, even when kindness is not returned. The Buddha once said, "Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love." This is the eternal law. It is easy to love the gentle, to forgive the well-meaning, to show kindness when it is reciprocated. The real practice begins when we meet someone whose words ignite our pride, whose actions stir our fear. In that moment, the mind quickly labels right and wrong, friend and enemy, good and bad. But if we pause, breathe, and look deeper, we may see something familiar beneath their behavior: confusion, longing, insecurity. The same human threads that live in us. When we recognize that shared fragility, judgment begins to fade, and the heart opens just enough to allow understanding to enter. There is a story of two monks walking through a muddy path after the rain. They came upon a woman unable to cross the road. One monk silently lifted her onto his back, carried her across, and continued walking. Hours later, the other monk broke his silence and said, "Why did you carry that woman? We monks should avoid contact with women." The first monk smiled and said, "I put her down miles ago. Why are you still carrying her?" The story reminds us that judgment is another form of carrying. We hold on to it long after the moment has passed, replaying the scene, labeling it, and weighing ourselves down. Compassion, by contrast, is the act of putting things down. It allows us to walk freely again. To practice compassion does not mean becoming passive or allowing harm. It means responding from wisdom, rather than from reactivity. It means speaking truth with gentleness, setting boundaries without hatred, and remembering that behind every behavior lies a story we do not fully know. In this practice, empathy becomes our compass. We learn to ask not, "What is wrong with this person?" but "What pain might this person be carrying?" The answer doesn't excuse the action, but it helps us see the human being behind it. When we cultivate compassion, we protect not only others from our anger, but also ourselves from the corrosion of bitterness. Judgment hardens the heart. Compassion keeps it alive. Each time you choose to understand instead of condemn, you strengthen the peace within you. The next time someone tests your patience, try pausing before reacting. Feel your breath. Remember that you too have acted out of confusion before. Let that remembrance humble you and soften your response. Over time, this practice becomes a way of living. You begin to walk through the world with eyes that see beyond behavior to the heart beneath. You start to listen more and assume less. Even in disagreement, you feel no need to wound or prove. You realize that compassion is not something you give to others, it is the atmosphere you live in. To cultivate compassion and non-judgment is to create a quiet refuge wherever you go. It is to live in such a way that, even when others lose their peace, you do not lose yours. 5. Live simply and be content. There is a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from hard work, but from wanting too much. We live in a world that constantly whispers, more success, more possessions, more recognition, more experiences. We chase one milestone after another, believing that just beyond the next goal lies the peace we've been searching for. Yet the more we chase, the more restless we become. Desire is like a thirst that grows with every sip. The Buddha once said, "To be satisfied with little is the greatest wealth," for he understood that the root of peace is not in acquiring, but in releasing the art of knowing when enough is truly enough. Simplicity does not mean living without comfort or pleasure. It means living with clarity. It is about distinguishing between what adds real value to life and what merely distracts us from it. When our minds are cluttered with endless wants, we cannot see clearly. We fill our days with things and plans and noise, yet feel strangely empty inside. But when we begin to let go of unnecessary possessions, of needless comparison, of the urge to prove ourselves, we start to breathe again. There is a lightness that comes with simplicity, a quiet space where joy can settle naturally without being chased. There's a story of a rich merchant who came to visit a monk living in a small hut. The merchant was astonished to see that the monk owned almost nothing, just a mat, a bowl, and a robe. "How can you live with so little?" the merchant asked. The monk smiled and replied, "How can you live with so much?" The merchant frowned, confused. "I am just passing through this world," he said. The monk nodded and said softly, "So am I." In that gentle exchange lies the heart of contentment. When we understand that everything we have, our belongings, our status, even our time, is temporary, we stop clinging to excess and start cherishing what remains. The principle of knowing enough is not about denying life's pleasures, but about savoring them fully, without attachment. A single cup of tea, when drunk with awareness, can bring more joy than a table full of luxury consumed in haste. When we live simply, gratitude becomes natural. We start to notice the morning sunlight filtering through the window, the scent of rain, the laughter of a friend, the softness of our own breath. These small, easily overlooked moments become treasures when our hearts are not distracted by the constant hunger for more. In simplicity, we also free ourselves from the suffering of comparison. Modern life feeds on measuring who earns more, looks better, travels farther. But no one ever wins this race, because the finish line keeps moving. When we stop comparing, we stop competing with illusions. Contentment grows not by rising above others, but by returning to ourselves. We realize that happiness has never been about having what others have, but about appreciating what is already ours. To live simply is to live mindfully. It is to consume with care food, media, possessions, even conversations, knowing that everything we take in shapes our inner landscape. When we surround ourselves with too much noise, our inner world becomes noisy too. But when we simplify, silence returns, and in that silence, we can hear our own heart again. Life slows down, not in boredom, but in depth. The smallest moments begin to feel rich and complete. So ask yourself, what do you truly need to feel at peace? What could you release that no longer serves you? Maybe it's a possession gathering dust, a goal that drains your energy, or a habit of always wanting more. Each time you let go, you make space for gratitude to bloom. Each time you pause before reaching for something new, you rediscover the quiet joy of enough. In the end, simplicity is not about less, it is about fullness. It is the fullness that comes from alignment, from living without pretense, from finding joy in the ordinary. When we live simply and are content, we no longer chase peace. We realize it has been with us all along, waiting patiently beneath the noise of desire, whispering in the stillness, "This moment is enough." 6. Stay equanimous amid praise and blame. There are moments in life when everything seems to move in our favor. People praise our efforts, success flows easily, doors open without knocking. And then, without warning, the winds change. What was once celebrated is criticized. What was once certain becomes unstable. And what once felt secure begins to fade away. The Buddha called these shifting conditions the 8 winds of life: gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disgrace, pleasure and pain. They blow through every human life, and no one is spared their force. Yet among those who walk the path of awareness, there is a way to stand firm, even when the air around us swirls with change. That way is equanimity, the quiet strength of an undisturbed mind. Equanimity does not mean indifference. It is not the cold refusal to feel, nor the denial of joy or sorrow. It is the art of remaining balanced in the midst of both. When praise comes, we accept it without attachment. When blame arrives, we receive it without collapse. We neither inflate nor diminish ourselves according to the voices of the world. A steady heart understands that both praise and criticism are echoes of impermanent opinions. They arise, they pass, and none of them can define who we truly are. The mind that depends on approval will tremble when applause fades. But the mind that stands on inner understanding cannot be shaken by either flattery or fault. There's a story of a monk whose teachings had spread far and wide. People adored him, calling him wise and enlightened. One day, a man came to the temple and shouted insults, accusing the monk of hypocrisy. The followers were furious, ready to defend their teacher. But the monk simply bowed his head and said, "Thank you for your words." Later, when asked how he could remain so calm, the monk replied, "If someone offers you a gift and you do not take it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man's anger, he explained, was his own. By refusing to take it, the monk remained free. This is the essence of equanimity, refusing to let the storms of others determine the weather of our own hearts. To live with equanimity is to recognize that life will always swing between gain and loss. Some days you win, some days you fall short. Some people will see your light, others will misunderstand it. None of it is permanent. When we attach our peace to the outer world, we give away our power. But when we anchor it inside, through mindfulness, gratitude, and clarity, no praise can insulate us, and no blame can break us. The ocean does not rise in pride when the moon lifts its tides, nor does it despair when the water recedes. It simply flows, steady and vast, unaffected by the surface ripples. Practicing equanimity begins with awareness. When you feel anger rising after someone's harsh words, pause before reacting. Notice the tension in your body, the heat in your chest. Breathe. Remind yourself, this is just a wave. It will pass. When someone praises you and your ego begins to swell, smile inwardly and whisper, "This too is a wave." Each time you do this, you teach your heart to stay steady, to witness both joy and pain with the same gentle understanding. Over time, you will notice that you no longer swing so violently between extremes. The highs become softer, the lows less dark. And what remains is a quiet stability that no circumstance can steal. In this balance lies true freedom. You stop living as a reaction to the world and begin living from your own center. The Buddha compared such a person to a mountain. Winds may blow from every direction, rain may fall, lightning may strike, but the mountain does not move. Its strength is not in resistance but in rootedness. When we cultivate that same inner grounding, we become like that mountain, calm, dignified, unmoved, yet still deeply alive. So the next time life brings you applause, smile but do not cling. When it brings criticism, listen but do not bow to despair. When pleasure visits, enjoy it without addiction. When pain arises, endure it without bitterness. Let everything pass through you as it must, like the wind brushing over water. The true measure of peace is not how calm life appears, but how calm you remain within it. Equanimity is that calm, the quiet confidence that no matter how the world shifts, your heart remains at home in itself, steady as the mountain, open as the sky. Stefan, nurture gratitude and a positive outlook. There is a quiet magic that begins the moment we choose to see what is present, instead of what is missing. Gratitude, at its heart, is not merely a polite response to kindness or fortune. It is a way of seeing, a way of living. It transforms the ordinary into sacredness and suffering into insight. When we practice gratitude, the world doesn't suddenly become perfect. Rather, our eyes learn to recognize the perfection that was already woven into it. The rain that delays your plans is also watering the earth. The mistakes that humbles you is also softening your pride. Gratitude invites us to meet life with open palms instead of clenched fists, to receive each moment, not as an obstacle, but as an offering. In Buddhism, gratitude is seen as a form of wisdom. It arises when we see clearly how interconnected our lives truly are. Every breath we take is made possible by countless unseen hands. The farmer who grows our food, the stranger who built the road we walk on, the trees that purify the air. When we recognize this web of interdependence, we begin to understand that we are never truly alone. Every blessing we enjoy has roots that stretch far beyond our sight. To live with gratitude, then, is to live with humility. To bow not only to what is pleasant, but also to what challenges us. For even pain, when met with awareness, can become a teacher. There's a story of a monk who fell ill after years of perfect health. His students gathered around, worried and helpless, but the monk simply smiled and said, "This sickness is also part of the path." When asked how he could be grateful for pain, he replied, "Because it reminds me that the body is not permanent, and that every breath, even a labored one, is still a gift." His gratitude did not erase the discomfort, but it illuminated it, transforming suffering into understanding. When we learn to thank life even for its difficulties, we stop fighting reality and start walking with it. Gratitude becomes the light that helps us see beauty even in the cracks. Practicing gratitude is not about forcing happiness or denying hardship. It is about holding both joy and sorrow in the same open heart. There will be mornings when gratitude feels natural, when the sunlight touches your face and peace comes easily. And there will be days when gratitude feels far away, when the heart is heavy and the world seems dim. Those are the days when the practice matters most. Even then, you can whisper softly to yourself, "Thank you for this breath. Thank you for this moment." It may seem small, but it is enough to shift the current of your thoughts from lack to abundance, from despair to quiet resilience. When we make gratitude a daily practice, it begins to shape our entire perception. We start to notice what once went unseen: the kindness of a stranger, the laughter of a friend, the simple miracle of being alive at all. Life becomes less about what we expect and more about what we receive. And in that shift, peace takes root. Optimism is not naive hope that everything will be easy. It is the steady confidence that even when things are hard, there is still something to learn, something to appreciate, something to love. Gratitude gives us the strength to rise again, to see the sun behind the clouds, to smile even in the middle of uncertainty. If you wish to cultivate gratitude, start small. At the end of each day, name 3 things, no matter how simple, that you are thankful for. The warmth of tea, the sound of rain, the patience of a friend. Over time, this quiet ritual will rewire your mind to look for blessings instead of problems. The more you look, the more you'll find. Gratitude multiplies what it touches, until even the smallest moments shimmer with meaning. A grateful heart is not blind to pain, it is simply wide enough to hold it. When we nurture gratitude, we build resilience not by denying life's storms, but by learning to dance in the rain. And in that dance, we discover a truth both simple and profound. Joy is not something to chase, it is something we awaken to, here and now, in the very life we already have. Gratitude doesn't just change how we see the world, it changes how the world feels within us. And perhaps that is the greatest blessing of all. So, as you reach the end of this reflection, take a moment to breathe deeply and feel the stillness within you. Everything you seek, peace, strength, clarity, has never been missing. It was only hidden beneath layers of worry, attachment, and noise. The teachings you've just heard are not rules to follow, but mirrors to help you see what has always been true. You are not the chaos around you. You are the awareness behind it. When you understand this, life begins to soften. You no longer need to fight every storm or chase every moment of calm. You begin to walk through change with quiet dignity, meeting each rise and fall with the same gentle heart. Remember, Peace is not a destination you arrive at. It is a way of traveling. Each breath, each small act of mindfulness, each moment of compassion is a step on that path. When anger arises, see it. When fear visits, hold it with kindness. When joy appears, receive it fully and let it go. This is the rhythm of a liberated mind, soft yet strong, open yet steady. As you move forward, may these 7 lessons accompany you like lanterns on a long night, guiding you back whenever you lose your way. Keep them close, practice them gently, and watch how life transforms, not by becoming easier, but by becoming clearer. The winds of gain and loss, praise and blame will keep blowing, but now you know how to stand firm. Within you lies a space that nothing can touch. Guard it with awareness, nurture it with gratitude, and let it expand until peace becomes your natural state. If these words have brought you calm or clarity, carry that feeling with you and share it. Because every peaceful heart helps quiet the world a little more.